me round a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode. Obviously, I'm not Shishi, but she is not here tonight. She'll be back next week. But I am here, Hannah Stevens, with Dan and Chris, and let them introduce themselves. But we're so excited to be back here with you again on this Wednesday evening. We have a lot in store for you. But before we get started, I want to go ahead and wrap our sponsor. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show, Workspace Solutions. You can go check them out. Appreciate all their love and support. And we have a jam-packed show. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. Do not forget to subscribe and like our YouTube channel. That's important. And also feel free to hit the comments. I do check the comments and I will call you out if you're dumb. So just know before you comment that I will call you out. But without further ado, obviously I'm Hannah Stevens. I'm one of the co-hosts on this show, but I want to pitch it to Dan. He's that way. And Dan, say hello.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, Commitment Wednesday. You know what I'm saying? I'm Dan James, lead recruiting analyst for the Bama Standard. Y'all go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. We got a very high impact show tonight, and we got a special guest, my brother from another mother.
Yo! So now I've officially parked the car. So I'm right here. How y'all feeling?
Hey, we're feeling great, man. We're feeling great.
My boy Chris!
What's good? Long time no see.
Then we got the real superstar. We got Miss Hannah in here. Hannah doing her thing in here.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm okay. Can't. Well, you could complain, but who wants to hear that, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, I guess I'm going to get us started if we're good with that kind of.
We got to let Chris introduce himself.
Do what?
We got to get Chris.
That's what I was going to say. I'm going to get it going. Steven, Dan, and then Chris. We all know who you are, but for maybe the few who don't, or maybe the few Michigan or Auburn haters that are just tuning in to watch our show, do you want to share who you are and what's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm Chris Owens. I played at Alabama. Fortunate to be carried to a couple of national championships by some really good players. Currently in the UFL, play for Arlington Renegades. We have a game next week against the Birmingham Stallions. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are in Alabama if you're watching the show. But if not, you need a team to root for. It's a brand new league. Feel free to root for us. But I haven't been on the show on the network for a while, and I'm just excited to be back.
Playing for your hometown team.
That's right. Right down the street.
So before we get started, Chris, give us an update on what's going on in the league. Obviously you were telling us earlier, wrapping up kind of what's going on. Just share your expectation for the season, your excitement, and what's new.
Yeah, so it's a mixture of the XFL and the USFL for those who pay attention to spring football. And overall, it's just another chance for players like myself to get some more film, get some experience, either try to advance to a higher level, or if this is the level you stay at, to make a name for yourself. And for me personally, I'm just excited to be with a new team. I was with a team in the Seattle Sea Dragons last year that didn't make it into the merger. And so to be on the new team, new faces, playing against guys from another league is just going to create some incredible competition. I'm just excited.
Yeah, I think when you look at what this league has done, like we were talking about before the show, whether it's getting you a shot to get back in the NFL or, continuing to build yourself on and off the field. I think it's such an incredible opportunity. And like I said before the show, and I'll say it again, I tended to watch these games more than the NFL games, especially when they were on Saturday, because I kind of feel like it filled in a gap for fans that missed Saturday college football. And like you were talking about before, I want you to share before I let Dan and Steven talk about how exciting it was to go to these games in different cities and to see all these fans show up that, were there simply to watch y'all and love the game of football.
Yeah, it's different than college, different than professional leagues. Like, these are hardcore football fans. There's no real obligation to watch football in the springtime, especially when you don't have ties and relationships to a lot of these guys. So being in environments like in St. Louis and DC, just not your normal football crowd, it was different. It kind of resembles a soccer crowd at times, and we've all seen how crazy those can get.
Dan, what do you want to ask?
Yeah, I think is phenomenal, because the fans that y'all have at the game, those are people that really like football, they love the game of football, and they're there to watch football. And I love, I think that could be a competitive advantage for the league, you know what I'm saying? And, it's really fun to watch, to see physical football, old school football,
I remember when the AAF league started, the Alliance League started. I think it was back in 2019, and how the Birmingham Iron had their team. You had Blake Sims on that team. You had Trent Richardson on that team, and just so many people in the city bonded with that team. And I had went to several games for the Birmingham Iron. I still have my 4-joint towel to this day. I still have it. Even the league disbanded, I still have that towel because, like Dan mentioned, you saw those real hardcore fans. They connected with the team. They connected with the city, and it brought something different. So, I mean, for you, Chris, just to get a chance to play in this pro atmosphere, I know the dream is still trying to get back to the NFL, but to still be in this pro atmosphere, like how cool is that for you?
It's really cool. And then, especially us, we train with Birmingham, like in the same facilities. So I run into Slade Bold and Deontay Brown. When Bo was still there, I ran into him. Like, I see those guys every day. So it's cool seeing some of my former teammates still chasing that dream alongside me.
That's awesome. Talking about, let's kind of transition a little bit, because obviously today on social media, it's all about pro day, right? I mean, for like the 100th day in a row, I feel like Nick Saban and Alabama are trending on Twitter. Looking at pro day, looking at what these guys were able to perform, obviously several names stick out to you, but for me, I think seeing Arnold perform the way he did was so important for him, especially with Saban retiring, Chris and Saban posting about it, and him being able to show up and perform. Chris, we'll start with you on this. What were your thoughts on pro day, and, how important is a pro day for some of these guys who, need one more good look at what they can do before the combine, before the draft?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to see much. I did see that Kool-Aid was able to get out there and do some stuff, which is really good considering he had that foot injury. But overall, pro day is just like for those guys who didn't go to the combine, especially. That's your time to get in front of the scouts, show them that you can compete, let them know how smart you are, and even if you get the chance to like interact one-on-one with them. And so to build that early chemistry that may go on down the line, like, for example, I was doing my workouts during my pro day, and I was just cheering on my teammates, and the Steelers GM was right there. I had never spoken to him throughout the draft process, and that's the team I signed with. So you never know who's watching. Even like little things like Terrion showing how excited he was for Kool-Aid. I saw that clip. That was really cool. So anything in pro day you do, they're looking at you through a microscope, and you just want to be on your best.
Absolutely. Dan, what were some of your best takeaways from pro day today?
Yes, I love the interaction between Terrion and Kool-Aid. I thought that was cool. I thought, Dallas Turner showed what a competitor he is, because he didn't have to do anything after the combine.
Yeah.
All he had to do was just show up and be there, just interview. He added a little more weight, which hurt him with his jump. But I was impressed with the competitive nature of Kool-Aid McKinstry getting out there with his foot injury, getting out there running the 40, and I thought he definitely impressed.
All right, Steven.
I mean, for me, I enjoyed the interaction between Kool-Aid, Terrion, and Jase McClellan was in there as well, getting involved in that. But I thought the funniest moment for me was before Terrion starts to run the 40, he looks at the ocean of media watching him, and he picks me out of the whole crowd. Terrion looks dead at me and goes, "Hey, Steve, I see you. You going to capture this 40 right here?" I'm like, "T, just run it, man. Just run it. We going to see what your time is." But I thought that was cool. But to see Kool-Aid, as Dan mentioned, you go out there, you have a Jones fracture in your foot. You're not going to get surgery until Friday, but you're still out there. You put down a 4.4 640. You do a 34.5-inch vert. You got a 10-foot broad jump. You did exactly what you need to do. And you put down on paper, I'm one of the best corners, if not the best corner in this draft class. Several scouts were looking at him throughout the day. I got a chance to watch the Raiders head coach, Antonio Pierce, spent a lot of time around Terrion. It was like those two are like connected at the hip the whole day. So if the Raiders make that move, not a bad choice for your secondary. The Raiders do have a number 13 overall pick there. Jase McClellan spent some time around the Saints, spent some time around with the Chargers scout. The Chargers could use a right tackle. The Saints could use the offensive lineman. So there were a few players that were around some teams today that I'm thinking, if these teams take this player, could be very nice for him.
You know, and Stephen, we'll start with you on this question. Obviously, wrapping up Proto conversation, who do you think, and I mean, I think we already know the answer, but given all the guys who were there today, who do you think had the highest raise in draft stock after Pro Day today?
I think it was Kool-Aid. I think it was Kool-Aid. I thought he had the. I think dude, when you look at Dallas Turner, Dallas did everything at the combine, so he already had cemented himself at the combine. When you look at Pro Day, Kool-Aid, who didn't get to go at the combine because of the foot injury, you already started to see people like Todd McShay and Mel Kiper start to bring him down on their boards. For Kool-Aid to go out there and say, look, you draft prognosticators, I'm still that dude, and he put down the numbers he put down, that tells McShay, wait a minute, I'm wrong. Let me elevate this brother back up here. That tells Todd McShay, wait a minute, let me move Kool-Aid back up here. So I thought Kool-Aid put the most money back into his bag, letting everybody know, even with the foot issues, I'm still picking it up and putting it down here.
Yeah. Dan, what was your thoughts before we go to Chris?
Ditto. I felt like you said, like Kool-Aid was, I mean, I thought he was highly impressive, you know, and Terrion really sold him. You know, he's a competitive, hard worker. You know, he's a football guy. You know, he is a go-getter, very hard worker. That's one thing that stands out about Kool-Aid. I've been a Kool-Aid guy for a while, you know, but
you drinking the Kool-Aid?
Yes, very, 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 very impressive.
So Dan, fun fact before we move on, Kool-Aid actually had grape Kool-Aid at Pro Day.
Oh my goodness! Oh really?
He had it in a Dasani bottle.
Oh my
grape
goodness!
Kool-Aid in a Dasani bottle.
Grape Kool-Aid. Oh man, that grape Kool-Aid. That's a performance enhancer. All the sugar.
Chris, obviously you're the only one of all of us who have been in this position. You know what these guys are going through. And I guess let's just take it back a little bit because, I mean, I am someone that definitely, I mean, I have competed national championships for powerlifting and weightlifting, and I know the nerves. I know it's not the same thing, just FYI, but I know you have the nerves and you have either the ability to achieve your goals or you can succumb to the pressure and the nerves. So when you look at how good these guys performed, does this just kind of give scouts and these NFL teams a look into the Alabama program that they're able to achieve and succeed even with a given pressure? Because a lot of these guys, when they, you know, when the ball's in their hands, they drop it. But for Alabama guys, it seems like they seem to do well each and every year, especially at Pro Day.
Yeah, I think it's really cool considering, like you said, there's some guys that didn't have to do anything at Pro Day. And for those guys to come out, they not only performed at the combine, came out and competed at the Pro Day. You know, scouts take heed to that. They see that there's a competitive spirit in them. They're not satisfied with the numbers they put out there. They're always looking to get better every week. And there's not been, at least from my recollection, too many guys that I can think of that just didn't do anything at Pro Day. Maybe some elected not to do a 40, or maybe some elected not to do some of the other events. But, you know, just always having a competitive mindset, it kind of carries on from the Saban regime onto the Kalen DeBoer regime. And, you know, that would give some good looks for those guys who are sitting in the stands, because we always go out there. If it's not our turn, we go out there and support our teammates. You know, it sets a really good example for those guys.
You know, and Chris, before we kind of move on to another topic, I want to ask your opinion on something, because obviously you were there under Nick Saban. And, you know, when you look at all that's happened, and you're going to figure out very quickly why I'm asking you this. You know, when you look at how Saban has vocally communicated about the NIL and the transfer portal, obviously we've seen this go well for guys, and we've seen this not go well for guys. We've seen guys transfer from Alabama and be no, actually I shouldn't say that because that's not true, but we have seen guys transfer into Alabama and be very successful. But when you look at what's happening now, before I go to Stephen and Dan, obviously J.C. Latham made a comment about Kadyn Proctor. For those who don't know, he transferred from Alabama, went to Nick Saban, announced his retirement, went to Iowa, now returning to Alabama. But Chris, I want to get your opinion, because I think it's a twofold. One hand, some guys may want to welcome him back. On the other hand, some guys be like, bro, like, we were here, we put in the work when we didn't really know what was going on, and now you're wanting to come back. So as a guy who played under Nick Saban, as a guy who has had that team unity and bond, what's your take on it? Do you think this is going to be well received with the team? Like, hey, bro, welcome back? Or you think this is going to be like, why'd you leave in the first place? What's your take on it with Kadyn Proctor coming back?
I think there's a potential there could be some mixture of those two. But overall, I think a lot of those guys would just be welcoming him to come back, partly because the ultimate goal is to win. You don't, especially with a new coach, you don't want to give off a bad impression that no matter what the situation is, you're not a team guy. And so I think what they should do, they should welcome him back. He should have to compete for a spot all over again. Nothing's guaranteed, but Coach Tomlin said something when I was in Pittsburgh, and it was along the lines of like, we don't care how you got in the room. We just know you're in the room. And at that point, he's going to be back in the room. Let him compete. That's your teammate, regardless of how you felt, because I'm sure you've made some bad decisions in your time at Bama before. Just be receptive because you don't know what's going through his head.
Yeah. Steven, before we go to Dan, what's your take on the whole Kadyn Proctor situation?
I mean, it's wild, but at the same time, I look at going back to what Chris Owens, my man CO, just said. It comes back to upon his return, how hungry does he want it, right? Because you're coming back to an offensive line. You got a brand new coach in Chris Kaplovich who's going to put it on you. And on top of that, you're competing against Miles McVay. You're competing against Wilkin Formby. You're competing against Naquil Bertrand. You're competing against Elijah Pritchard. You're competing against a lot of these dudes. So, and they have gotten a foot over you in terms of what Coach Chris Cap wants to do, and also in terms of what Kalen DeBoer, wants to do offensively. So for Kadyn Proctor, it's, yes, I'm making my return, but it's how quickly am I ready to kind of hit this ground running to make up time? Because my time away is time missed from being able to learn a lot of the stuff that the new staff has brought in. So cool to have him back, but how much ground can he make up?
Yeah, and Dan, before I kind of transition to the question about this, what's your take with the news, Kadyn Proctor coming back to Alabama?
Hey, welcome to college football as we know it. Now, you know what I'm saying? But, it's what happened. No one, had a problem jumping on Coach Saban when he made the comments on Capitol Hill. Now, okay, Coach Saban like, okay, all right, here it is. He leaves. Okay, this is what you got. So what's the problem? Everyone that was whining about Coach Saban, Bama's still going to be Bama. So it should be a problem when we get the best player. Quit whining. When we get top players, quit whining. I don't want to hear other fan bases whine because, you had a problem with Coach Saban, when he made the issue. Same thing Kirby Smart said, same thing Dabo said, but no one jumped on there. It's just because who was saying it, and hey, it is, y'all just learn to love it.
People hate greatness, Dan. People hate greatness, man.
Hate greatness, yeah.
That's right. We'll start with Chris on this question. Still talking about, Kadyn Proctor coming back. Do you think this kind of sets a precedent for guys still in the program to kind of see a guy like Kadyn Proctor leave and realize, like JC Latham said, the grass isn't always green on the other side? But do you also think it's kind of tempting for some of the other Bama guys who have left to think, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe, just maybe, I should go back to my roots. What's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's the first time I've seen anything like that. And like you said, the grass isn't always greener. We have a lot of advantages at Alabama, regardless of who our head coach is, who the players are. There's a lot of things both on the field and off the field that we have that other schools don't have. And so getting to get a glimpse of that, whether his friends convinced him or whatever the case may be, you go to some place and you're like, dang, we don't have this. We used to have that. Even if it comes down to just little teammate things like locker room interactions. So it's not always greener on the other side. And I think it will show some of the guys in the program, if they haven't started believing in Coach DeBoer right now, maybe they're saying like, wow, other guys who've left, they've seen the vision. They're seeing the momentum we're building. Maybe we are in the midst of something great, and maybe I should be a little cautious before I head out.
Steven, what's your take, buddy?
I mean, when you look at what Chris just said, I agree with that. This is going to open the door for a lot of these athletes, for a lot of these players to think, before I make a decision, let me really think on this. Because if we go back to the moment Saban retired, of course, Greg Byrne, athletics director, says, give us 3 days. Give us 72 hours to find this coach here. Of course, Greg Byrne did it in 49 hours. But the point being, you had so many veteran players, whether it was Tyler Booker, whether it was Jalen Milroe, they're saying, don't jump ship, hang tight, hear the coach out, hear the vision out, don't leave. And yet, several guys now, Kadyn Proctor, one of them, but you're going to start to see more people be more conscious of, let me just really see what this move is before I just head out the door, before I jump ship and make a decision that I'm going to regret about. Let me just hang tight, be patient. People don't like that word, patience. Let me be patient, see what this move is, and then make my move after getting the full picture of what this situation is.
Dan, what's your take?
Definitely, he's a young man. They tend to make rash decisions. A lot of them did, you know what I'm saying? But I think he made this choice again. The first choice was, it was, he wanted to be back home. Coach Saban retiring. Mama, I want to come home. That's his reaction. That's what kids do. But I guess being at Iowa, the facilities, the coaching, everything, he was like, the interaction with players, like Chris said, he was like, wait a minute. I don't miss home that much, So he had to change. He came back and visited, and then he realized where home was. And that's what I think the issue was.
Well, speaking of a guy who did leave and looks like he's not coming back, and I'm just going to be honest, you can call me a PRP, a professional feather ruffler. That's what I'm trying to say. I can't even get the letters out. But this topic's probably going to offend several people in the chat. That's okay. But I want to start with Chris on this, because obviously this position is near and dear to you. So let's talk about a guy who has left Alabama, Seth McLaughlin, and seems to be doing well at Ohio State. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room, so to speak. His comments, Ryan Day, the Ohio State head coach, made comments that it looked like it was more about Jalen Milroe's cadence than it was Seth McLaughlin's talent. So, Chris, put yourself in Seth McLaughlin's shoes. Now, listen, I'm not saying the guy is a bad guy. I know he's a great dude, but, any other job you go to in the world, if you're not doing what you need to do and you're not living up to your standards, or you're not doing your job to a certain degree, you're going to get criticism. You're going to get whatever. So when you look at how this Alabama offense operated last season, we saw it numerous times, whether it's false start or, whatever, over and over and over. Your opinion, before we even dive deep into what Ryan Day said, what was your opinion on Seth McLaughlin's performance overall last season?
I love Seth, and that's my guy. And I've talked to him a couple of times, so it's nothing that I wouldn't tell him. I think he just had a lot going on, especially early on in the season. When you got a couple guys who are brand new to their positions, you got a new quarterback, everything's kind of new. That's a big adjustment. And I'm pretty sure Seth can acknowledge too, there were times where he had his role in what went wrong on the offense. But, I really hated that I saw a lot of people put everything solely on him. There were a lot of things that didn't go right with the offense last year. That doesn't excuse what happened with the snaps or the cadence, whatever it was. But I think everyone had an equal role. So I don't necessarily think Seth played bad, because I saw him make a number of plays and, save a couple of sacks that we probably should have had just based on redirect and protection and all that. But, he had his role, and it's unfortunate whatever came out. But, I saw the comments and it doesn't really sit right with me.
Yeah. So sorry to put you in that position, but when when you play that position and you see this, like, Steven, what's your take on it? Because I'll be honest. The one thing that I appreciated about Nick Saban and hopefully Kalen DeBoer is that he doesn't throw shade like that, right? He's classy. Guys come in, good and well. I think the only shade Saban ever threw was at Jimbo Fisher, which was, I think, rightfully able to be thrown.
Justifiable.
Yeah.
Yes, justifiable. But when you look at what Ryan Day said about Jalen Milroe, who, by the way, is still playing this season, as if the guy needs another chip on his shoulder to try to win the Heisman and lead Alabama to the championship, what's your take not only on what Ryan Day said, but also, granted, Seth McLaughlin, a great guy, but this is spring practice. This is not in front of 100,000 screaming fans where it's loud and obnoxious. What's your take on the situation, Stephen?
When I saw this, I was like, Ryan Day, what are you doing? No. What are you doing? No. Like, you don't sit there and do that. You're looking at a Jalen Milroe, of whom, let's be honest, even with the struggles Milroe had last year, this guy was still nearly a 3,000-yard quarterback with Tommy Rees. Think about that. This guy is still a 35 touchdown guy with Tommy Rees. This guy is still nearly with Tommy Rees, and no offense to Tommy Rees, but this guy with Tommy Rees still almost takes you to a national championship. So Milroe made exponential growth, and it's going to get even better this season. But Ryan Day, there was no sense in that. There was no sense in that. It's just, all you got to say for that, look, man, we got Seth McLaughlin here. He's doing fine. He's doing good. And just leave it there. You don't throw Jalen Milroe's name out there. He's not even with Milroe no more. So that was in poor taste there for Ryan Day. Now, as we get into the whole thing with Seth McLaughlin, I just go back to what Chris said. As a whole, the offense wasn't what we wanted to be last year. We can honestly say that. And everybody had their hands in the pot there, whether it was the offensive line not having its best performance, whether it was Jalen Milroe at times holding the ball too long, whether it was Tommy Rees taking the ball out of Justice Haynes' hands when you were not supposed to. Everybody had a role in that. So it was not just solely on McLaughlin. It was not just solely on Milroe. Everybody had a role in how last season ended without a national championship. But just for Ryan Day, that was poor taste. You talk about how McLaughlin has improved, but you leave Jalen Milroe out of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Stephen. And I think the thing is this is the epitome of why Ohio State always comes up short each season, because they're so focused on other programs rather than their own that they always lose when they need to win, right? So, I mean, Ohio State will be a favorite beginning of the season, win national championship. And then by golly, by the middle of the end of the season, they've lost 1 or 2 games that they should have won had they have been able to focus on themselves and not Alabama. But, that is what it is. That's what Ohio State's always done. Dan, obviously want to get your take on this, and kind of while I'm asking you this question, transition a little bit, but go ahead real quick on your take on what Ryan Day said about Seth McLaughlin and Jalen Milroe. And then I'm going to start with you with the next question.
Okay. First, I want to say Coach Saban didn't throw shade at Jimbo Fisher. He called him out. He said Texas A&M. Boss team. You know what I'm saying? That's what he said. So that's not throwing shade. He just called it like it was. You know what I'm saying? But Ryan Day, I hate to say what a grown man should have said, but it sounds to me like you're already making excuses for the guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Instead of challenging, you want to challenge, hey, we want to work on those problems. We want to work on those issues. We don't anticipate those issues. That's what he could have said. But make excuses. So what happens the next time he snaps it over the quarterback's head? Is it going to be a Kadyn's issue or what is it? I'm no shade at Seth McLaughlin. He did a tremendous job. He was a tremendous job blocking, doing, but the most fundamental part of being a center is getting the ball into the hands of the quarterback.
Yep.
And that part he was lacking. Just be real. So, I'm a challenge him. Let's just work on that. Let's not say it was probably with the cadence. It is what it is. You're second year center. So what's the excuse going to be? In the big game when he snaps it in the ground in the dirt. What's the issue? So that's going to be on. That's going to come back. We're going to bookmark that comment from Ryan Day.
I mean, I don't take anything he says seriously. Didn't he get mad at Lou Holtz?
Yes.
I could care less about Ryan Day. I don't like Ohio State in general. Right. I never have, never will. I could care less what Ryan Day has to say. How about you win a playoff game or something?
Yeah, or win a game like beat Michigan. I mean, how much of a cushion does he have? I feel like homeboy has been on the hot seat for the last several seasons, and he chokes every single year when he has the opportunity to actually let his team go to the playoff. He chokes, and yet somehow they're like, "Oh, well, next year's our year." Sorry, it's not. And I really would love to see Seth McLaughlin and Julian Sayin play together one day. But anyway, I think Steven needs to hop off. Is that right, buddy?
Yeah. So I got one final thing before I hop off.
Go ahead.
Final thing here. So here's my whole thing with Ryan Day. Ryan Day, if he don't do something this year, because I think the only reason why Ohio State got that NIL collective up is because the boosters there said, what's it going to take for us to go on a run and beat Michigan several times? What's it going to take? More money? Okay, we're going to give you the more money. So they gave Ryan Day the more money. If he don't do something this upcoming season, watch the fans bring the pitchforks and torches to that house in Columbus. Right. So it's going to be this season. If this season he don't do nothing, and after all that money that's been paid to get these athletes, watch the pitchforks and torches come at him now.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And he can't blame Saban now because Saban's gone. So I'm excited to see this.
No doubt. He's no longer on the hot seat. He's in the frying pan. That's what it is.
He better just hope he can keep Caleb Downs.
Oh, I know. Very, very true. All right. So speaking of big news for Alabama, Dan, I'm going to let you start with this one. I think for me, we've been talking about this each every week, this conversation of guys coming to Alabama. And we've said numerous times how exciting this is, not only for Alabama, but to be able to show that Kalen DeBoer, I mean, let's be honest. I think when you look at the new coaches that have been hired at different programs, D1, he's had the hardest job because not only was he transitioning to their school, but he was taking over the position from the greatest coach of all time while having the era of social media, while having the transfer portal and NIL. So you have all those in one container. Kalen DeBoer dove right into the deep end. He didn't even care, but he had to keep the coaches. He had to keep the current locker room while letting the current commits know, hey, we're still interested in you, while getting new commits and while dealing with the transfer portal. So you got to give the guy credit because I think he has done a phenomenal job doing what he's done. But want to start with you, Dan. Duke Johnson committing to Alabama. What's your take and how exciting and how big, honestly, of a pickup is this for the Crimson Tide?
Huge. Duke Johnson, he's from less than 2 hours up the road from me. Really like this athlete. He's played small ball Georgia, but he was the 2A defensive player of the year in Georgia. I really like it. I like the move. Very athletic, ball hawk. I think he projects as a linebacker right now, but he's another that goes into the theme of the players we're signing right now. We're getting right now, rather get commit is, he's a guy that can play multiple positions, So, I think they could beef him up, add a little bulk to him. He can play, linebacker, or, he can stay where he is, move to a drop down safety, box safety. But I really like this move, and I love, he's a top 100 player in the state of Georgia. He was, just 2 weeks ago, he was leaning Florida State.
Yep.
So he came to Alabama and visited, and wow, it was the wow factor. It let you know it's something special going on in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Coach Kalen DeBoer, he's just showing that he was the right man for the job. That's just what it's showing. It's new energy. We could have hired Kirby Smart, and that would have just brought on more Bama fatigue. Yeah. We got new energy, new direction. With Coach Kalen DeBoer, I'm loving the move. Every move, he's countering with. We lose Coach Huff, to the, we lose Ryan Grubb, and he keeps on, making phenomenal hires. This guy he's proven that he is the guy for the job. And, I think he's going to be highly successful in Tuscaloosa.
No, I agree, Dan. And I think when you look at several things about coaches, I think for me personally, I love to see the relationship they have with their players. And I know Chris can attest that was one of the best things about Nick Saban was that he truly cared about his players and he truly cared about their growth, not only as a player, but as an individual. So Chris, before I ask you about Duke Johnson, share a little bit about Saban, because I think we're starting to see the personality that maybe or maybe not y'all saw in the locker room at his house, where he's a guy who actually smiles. He enjoys oatmeal cream pies, and he's a decent human being. I think people don't see that on TV. But how important was it for you to play for a guy like Saban that, like I said, not only cared about how well y'all did in your career, but also how you grew as an individual in becoming a man?
Yeah, it was part of the reason why I was able to stick around. And when I had the opportunity to leave or transfer, I kind of took second thoughts on it, just because he cared about so much more than football. Mm-hmm. And, people, they see on ESPN, CBS, they see him angry, throwing headsets, always yelling. But his interpersonal skills, just being able to talk to you one-on-one, regardless of what you're going through, smile, joke with you before practice, after practice. He does let his guard down a little bit, but he knows when it's time to work, it's time to work. And so I feel like with Coach DeBoer here, he's obviously going to have his own coaching style as well, but he's going to get some influence from Coach Saban. Sure. Because at the end of the day, a lot of those guys on the team are still, for lack of a better term, Coach Saban's babies. That's who he recruited. And he still wants to see out the vision that he told those kids' parents when they first recruited them. So, I think it's going to be important for Coach DeBoer to see that as well. But I think Coach Saban will have his hand in everything to make sure that ship is flowing just right.
Sure. And I mean, I made the comment a couple of weeks ago. We forget that when Saban came in 07, I mean, these kids were babies. Like they've never seen an Alabama football season without Nick Saban. So when you see the dynamic change where the program has a new coach, I mean, I have to, looking back, you have to give them a little bit of grace to realize, first off, these guys are still like, you know, some of them are still in the high school age and they're very emotional. Like people that say boys, no offense, guys, are not emotional are wrong, because I know we as females are emotional, but so are guys. So when you have a big life change, there's going to be emotional decisions. So when Kalen DeBoer made his comment about the same thing about Saban, was these guys and their maturity and growing and investing in their lives, I think that was something that kept some of these guys around. But Chris, going to the next point about Duke Johnson, Dan did a really good job. Obviously loves recruiting, does a fantastic job. But when you look at what he can bring to the table for a defense that needs to continue to be more consistent on not letting the deep balls go over us and being able to be, I mean, because I'll be honest, I miss the days when our defensive line, and I'm friends with Daron Payne, love the guy, amazing dude. He was like a tiger pouncing for his prey off that defensive line. I miss those days when we did that, and miss the days when we could, you know, pick six. So a guy like Duke Johnson, who is very talented, explain how important he is for this Crimson Tide defense.
So I was looking at a couple of his highlights because obviously I've been a little busy in camp. But, you know, from what Dan says, he plays a lot in the secondary, but he also lines up on the line of scrimmage as an edge rusher. I've seen him on offense. I've seen him at quarterback. Like, he's all over the field. And, you know, those are the type of guys that you feel comfortable if you need to play a bigger package, you can have him out there. Sure. And maybe he can be on the line of scrimmage. Or if you want to go small ball, maybe you could put him as an edge rusher who could drop in the coverage. It just mixes up the different looks. And from what I'm hearing, I think it's Coach Womack. Is that how you say his name? Mm-hmm. He has a
Womack, I don't know.
Something like that. He has a different scheme than what we've been used to in the previous years. And so maybe having a guy like that, similar to like how Iowa had Cooper DeJean, to where he kind of played all over the field, maybe we can get something like that. And we haven't seen really anything like that since maybe like
Minka, Isaiah Simmons, you know,
Brian Branch, you know, another one of those guys.
Chris, going to start with you on this question because you kind of brought up a valid point that I want to mention, because I don't think we really ask anyone this, especially a former player. If you were in the locker room now, right, you have the opportunity to either transfer or stay, and you were watching all this unfold, would you be happy with the hires that Kalen DeBoer has brought in? Some names that, you know, especially South Alabama. I mean, obviously you have to trust in the process, but do you think you would be happy, or would you be a little bit concerned, you know, just your honest speculation now? But if you were in that locker room, would you be like, all right, we got this, I trust this, or would you be like, is this really going to work? What would your feelings be?
I think I'd probably be a little skeptical just initially, but knowing that Coach Saban isn't, for lack of a better term, going anywhere, like he's going to be around, that would make me feel a little better, because I know that if I've been with him for this long, he's done everything he can to bring in the best personnel. And whether it was a hit or a miss, he did everything he could to bring the best he can.
Sure.
And on top of that, we have to remember that Coach DeBoer was just in the national championship game.
Yep.
And I don't think they played particularly poorly. I just think they missed on a couple big plays that would have really changed that game.
I agree.
And so when you combine those things, you'll be a little nervous. I wouldn't jump in the portal immediately because, like I said, Alabama is just more than, you know, just the organization. Like it's a whole body of work that encompasses Alabama. So I'd be a little more cautious on that end, but I would have my best effort to trust as much as I can, because you won't be able to gain trust from anybody else if you don't give them all of yourself. And so
sure,
I'd be a little skeptical, but I think I can make it work.
Yeah. Dan, we're going to talk now a little about A-Day. Obviously, that's probably the biggest conversation right now in Tuscaloosa is A-Day, which is coming up. Very excited for that. It's going to be on ESPN, which I think speaks a lot about Alabama, because I remember, I mean, I'm 31 and I know Dan's 32, but, you know, we're just going to talk about just the fact that, you know, we're a little bit older. And I remember when A-Day was like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's a great day to go get sunburnt in the upper deck, you know, like no big deal. But for a season like this, we'll start with you, Dan. How big of an A-Day do you think it is? Because I remember when Nick Saban, I mean, people showed up, like, and it used to be Alabama and Ohio State would compete who could have the most fans there. But I think people kind of got I shouldn't say Saban fatigue, but I think we just kind of got spoiled with like winning national championships. And we're like, oh, well, it's going to be a great A-Day. But how big of an A-Day do you think it is for not only seeing new talent, but seeing these new coaches?
Yeah, it's going to be a standing room only 100,000 plus in the stadium, 200,000 outside the stadium. I mean, it's going to be an atmosphere like none other we haven't seen since Coach Saban's first, so sure. I'm a little bittersweet because I'm the only one on the panel, I think, that won't be there.
I won't be there Saturday. I have fire training.
So,
I'm pretty sure I have a game that day.
So, I'm anticipating, a lot of fan interaction. And it's an opportunity. And Coach DeBoer, he's having a meet the coaches with former players, and this guy, man, I'm talking about infectious personality. I mean, people are gonna love him when they get to meet Coach DeBoer. They're really gonna love him. He has this magnetic personality, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just so impressed with him. And I don't think there's no other coach that could have been able to come in and do the job that he has done.
Yeah. And Chris, is someone who has participated in a spring game, an A-Day, what is it like as a player? Obviously, as a fan, it's a way for us to kind of see what we can expect. 2 questions for you. One, because Saban's not there anymore, so it doesn't even matter what you say. But the first one, what is it like playing an A-Day? And 2, how much does Saban hold back so the media and fans wouldn't really know what to expect come game 1?
I honestly think I can answer those 2 questions in one. For a player, it's both exciting, especially if you're a young guy. Once you get older, you're just kind of like, all right, this is another scrimmage. But for those young guys, especially, it's exciting. It's your first time in Bryant-Denny as in a game like atmosphere with the stadium painted, everything looks nice. Because usually we go out there and it's just like green grass, white lines. That's it. Sure. So you get a glimpse of what the atmosphere is like. But also, as a player overall on a team, whether you're younger or older, it should be it's not mentally stressful because we keep the playbook very simple. So they want to see who's playing fast. They want to see who can execute the day 1, day 2, day 3 install. There's no spots won or lost at A-Day, despite what people may think. Half the time, we're not even letting anybody see what we're doing. Sure. And we're not you won't really see design runs from Milroe, not the ones that are really going to matter. Sure. Little things like that. And so if I'm a player, I'm thinking, okay, we got base install. Let's just play fast, have fun, make sure we execute in front of everyone because that's what the coaches want to see. They want to see who's playing fast, flying around. And so I think it's fun, stress-free. And if you're an older player, you've kind of seen this song and dance 5-6 times, but it will be new because we have a new coach. Sure. So you never know how many eyes will be there. I think my last year might have been one of the medium-sized crowds, but this year they might have a packed house just so people can see what's going on.
Sure. And Dan, obviously, first scrimmage coming up, it's one of those things where, as an athlete growing up, I always loved scrimmaging, right? I could be exhausted, have 2 broken legs and a broken arm, and my coach says, we're scrimmaging today. I'm like, perfect, let's go. So, Dan, first scrimmage this Saturday. What's your take? What are you excited about? And, what do you think we're going to get from that?
Yeah, I'm looking, to see the offensive rep, who the first group wide receivers, who's repping the first team O-line. I'm looking for things like that. It won't mean much now, till fall camp. That's when it finally decided. But I'm gonna look at like that. I'm gonna look who's making a move. As far as positional battles. Those are the things you want to look at the first scrimmage. Who, the newcomers. You want to see what newcomers are making strides. Those are the things you want to look for in the first scrimmage.
Sure. And Chris, I'm going to ask you the same question in a different way because I love the fact that you played, so I can ask you because neither one of us did. So I remember when Saban's first year's Alabama, it was kind of historical for older players to play, right? Like if you were a true freshman, sometimes even a sophomore, you knew what your role was. It was not going to be starting. But Saban, obviously, over the years, transitioned to where, hey, if you're good enough to play, you're going to play regardless of what year you are. So for some of these younger guys, maybe some of these transfer guys, how big is a scrimmage like this? And what is there to lose and what is there to gain for some of these guys?
I think it's a perfect time for those guys to gain experience. It's the first time since they've stepped on campus, especially if you're early enrollee, that the coaches won't be behind you during a scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's only Coach Saban. Everybody's on the sideline. They're signaling in the plays, the formation, just like a game-like scenario. And so it's not going to be there's not going to be training wheels on it, you know?
Sure.
It's going to be their first time out on the field, and they want to see how you respond to that. And oftentimes you get ones versus twos and twos versus ones. So for those second groups, both on offense and defense, that's when you really get to see how you're playing.
Yeah.
And when you do go twos versus twos finally and ones versus ones, then that's the iron on iron, iron sharpening iron part of the scrimmage. So that'll be really important for them. I don't know if you probably remember Coach Terry Jones. He told me something one time. He said that the spring is where you get on the bus and fall camp is where you find your seat on the bus.
Ooh,
This is
I like that.
for those guys to really get their names out there, get on the bus, and then later on figure out where they want to be. So you want to make plays, you want to assignment clean, you want to do all those things right.
Yeah, and then one more question for you, Chris, before we kind of talk about other sports and expectation for the season. We've seen conversation of guys who may actually have their position changed. You come to Alabama, you've been there, you come to Alabama, you're like, I'm going to play this position. And then you get there and they're like, hey, actually, this may be a better fit for you. We've seen that happen and it ended up being successful for several guys at Alabama who went on to the NFL and played in those changed positions. I mean, what is that conversation like? How hard is it to be like, I've played this my whole life and now you're wanting me to change? I mean, what's your perspective on that and how some of these guys, we may see that this season, we may see them think, hey, I'm going to be second row in this bus. Like, no, bro, coach will be like, you're actually ninth row and there's a reason for that. Just trust me.
It's hard. It happened to me when I got there. I came in as a guard, and it was actually my second year. Coach Saban and our O-line coach at the time, Coach Key, they're like, yeah, we're going to throw you in at center. I was like, I've never played center a day in my life. And so it's nerve-wracking because you don't know what to expect.
Sure.
You're worried about if I make a mistake, how mad are they going to be? But at the same time, they also made the decision to switch you. They know that they see you potentially being a better fit there, so they're willing to go through the growing pains. So I think who's the tight end that might switch the receiver that they were talking about?
Caleb Odom.
Yeah, I saw that. And if he's a big body and he's as, athletically gifted as people say he is, and, that might further his career longer than we thought. I mean, You see, the most immediate example is Trayvon Diggs just got paid. I mean, it works out for a lot of those guys. So it's something that's a little hard to deal with, but you just got to trust that the coaches have a plan, and unlike me, hopefully understand that they'll be a little bit more patient with you than you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Dan and Chris, before we kind of talk about some other sports and we pitch the next show, let's just have a hot take for a minute, shall we? Because I love when we are right. I love when I'm right because I'm a woman, right? I'm just kidding. But let's talk about expectations for the season, because I think some fans are like, oh my word, we're going to lose 5 games. And then you have some fans like, oh my word, we're going to win a national championship. Dan, let's start with you. Realistically, where do you see this team doing this year? I mean, and I want to say this too. This is kind of like my little bit of a rant. I love that the BCS and the college football playoffs goal, in all honesty, was to prevent Alabama from making it, right? Because Alabama kept winning the BCS. So you're like, well, forget that. We're just going to do this whole college football playoff. Well, Alabama kept doing well. So like, well, okay, we're just going to keep extending it until Alabama can't get in. And then, ironically enough, the one year where there's like 18 million teams is the first year that Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban. So could Alabama lose a couple of games and still get into the playoff? Dan, what's your take on what this team A can do and what B we may see this team end up as?
Man, listen, there no way in the world there will be 12 better teams than what the Alabama Crimson Tide are going to roll out on the field this year. Actually, I think, we may have improved the roster significantly. We have experience. We got guys coming back. We got Tim Smith coming back. We got Quindarius Robinson coming back. Jihad Campbell, guys like that, Deontay Lawson. The depth on the defensive line. I expect us to make a run into the college football playoff, potentially winning it. Yeah.
Chris, what's your take?
Until I see someone beat us in the SEC championship game, someone's got to show us.
Sure.
Like, I have to see it to believe it. And I think, like Dan said, the team is, I think, in a better position, at least right now, than we were last year.
Sure.
If there are some big transfers coming back, then that's only going to improve the team. But I think a lot of those guys are buying into what Coach DeBoer and those guys are selling, and that's ultimately going to lead us to have a better start to the season than what we had, because I feel like that was really our downfall. We started probably the first 5-6 games of the season really slow.
Sure.
And picked up on a high note, but in the midst of that slow start, we lost a game, played pretty poorly in a couple of those games as well. And so as long as we can start fast, I think we have enough veteran leadership that can see us to the finish line. So I honestly think we'll easily be a playoff team.
Ty Alexander, thank you so much for the love. Love the panel tonight. Roll Tide, roll to Hannah, Uncle Dan, the other guy. Sorry, bro, didn't catch a name. If you don't know,
all good, bro.
There goes Chris Owens. I apologize. This guy right here is amazing, and I'll tell you why. First off, he's humble. Secondly, he is the epitome of what can happen when you go to Alabama. And thirdly, he is hardworking, and I think that we could use him back at Alabama. So we just need to give you a new name, and you just need to enter the transfer portal somehow, and we'll pick you back up, and you can just be the leader on this offense, because that's honestly what I think we need is – if we can get back to the fundamentals, Chris, of where our offensive line blocks, protects, and our quarterback can be consistent and accurate, then I see no problem. So I am excited for this year. And yeah, I mean, I think the more they try to keep Alabama out, the easier it is for us to get in, because I think that's just all we need is that little bit more of a chip on our shoulder. But I've just loved sitting back and watch it happen because, you know, everyone hates Alabama. I know that we're like the Warriors of the NBA. You know, we're like, you know, the whoever you want to call us. Maybe we're the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFL. But we win because we're good. And we win because Nick Saban and now Kalen DeBoer have done a great job helping get coaches and players who want to win. And Chris, my last question for you before we – oh, look at that. Dark, Michigan fan here. Good luck in the upcoming season. Hope we get a rematch soon. You know what, Chris, let's take this for a second. You know what, forget what I was going to ask you. What's your take on Michigan? I mean, do you think they're going to be able to transition well with a new coach? And, you know, I mean, I don't know. Can they read? Do they still plays? I don't
know. They lost a lot of talent this year into the draft. I think they had, 18 players at the combine? Something like that. It just depends. I mean, Sherrod Moore did a really good job when he filled in. And I think that that's going to keep a lot of those guys in the house because they saw that he was able to lead them to a couple of victories. And so I think they'll be good. I'm pretty sure they'll recruit well as always. Having the 3 straight victories over Ohio State will be good for them as far as that front. And it would probably shock me if I didn't see them in the college football playoff. I don't know. I just don't think there will be 12 teams better than those guys, especially because I know not everyone from that team left. And so there's going to be some veteran leadership that come back and say, this is the formula. We have a new coach, but this is essentially the same system we've ran before. This is how we're going to do things.
And I agree. And I think, you know, he's kind of he reminds me a little bit of Cadillac Williams with the way that he's able to just engage and those players will run through a brick wall. And I know this is just an example. I'm not saying go Auburn. I'm just saying, you know, this is what I used to do. I used to do sports broadcasting. So I do the X's and O's. So for me, he's kind of like their Cadillac Williams who can rally the troops and get wins going. One more question, Dan, before we wrap this up, talk sports for a minute. And obviously Teague's Take is coming on right after this. I believe, is it 8:15, Justin? 8:15 Central. Teague's Take. You don't want to miss that. But Dan, I want to get, and Chris too, I want to get your perspective because one of the things Saban struggled with had to every year was rehire coaches, right? Assistant coaches, position coaches. Do you think it was smart that DeBoer went for the guys he went with? Maybe not just for necessarily have the name recognition, but hopefully they'll be around for a couple of years before they transition. I mean, what's your take on that, Dan? And, you know, was it strategic maybe on Kalen DeBoer's part?
It would, that's what happens when you build relationships. And, Coach DeBoer, anytime you can talk a head coach into leaving his job to become a position coach, you really made a huge impression on that person. Yeah. Coach Kane Womack said, he came to Bama because he believed in Coach DeBoer. And the everyone knows, we took, we had coach the strength and conditioning coach Ballou. You know, he was there with them at Michigan. I mean, not Michigan, Indiana.
Yeah.
You know, so he built relationships. You know, I think, you know, we could have been secretly grooming Coach DeBoer for all we know, call Coach Saban, he's always ahead of the curve.
And he brought Penix with him to Washington.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so this guy builds relationships. You know, he like I said, infectious personality, you know, and, you know, we might as well get used to it. You know, we're going to lose coaches because Alabama is Alabama. You know, the name says, you know, people hire a coach off our staff simply because we're Bama, you know, without them having much of a resume, you know. So, you know, but, you know, he's proven us time and time again that he will always make a great hire, not just the next hire. He's always going to make a home run hire every time. You know, he's batting 1,000, you know. So, you know, you know, he set the bar high in we're not even fully into year one yet, and he has set the bar extremely high. You know, so hey, he spoiled us. He did it. You know, so.
Well, speaking of home run and batting, let's just talk about other sports for a minute. Baseball, winning the series against Tennessee. How big was that? I mean, I'll be honest with you. That first game, I was sick to my stomach. Yeah. Oh, Lord, here we go. And then to come back 2 in a row. I mean, I was pumped, Dan. I was pumped. I was lit, as they say.
Yes. You know, that was the first time I didn't smoke a cigar when we beat them in football. You know what I'm saying? But that right there, you know what I'm saying? It was huge, man. You love to see it. You know, it wasn't just any Tennessee. You know, Tennessee highly ranked baseball program. You know, so it was huge. It showed the stride that Coach Vaughn has made. You know, after the debacle of a year that we had, you know, under Bohannon. You know, so he has made, you know, a quick, impressive turnaround. You know, we started seeing a little bit of it at the tail end of last year. You know, so, you know, I'm excited. You know, I try not to get too high or too low, just like with the basketball team. But man, they're reeling me in, man.
So that's what those cigars are for. I saw Riley Quick. He posted something. I was like, "What are they smoking cigars for?" But
yeah, Riley Quick is actually out for the season. You know, he shoulder injury. So yeah. Dang. And that hurt. You know, that was a big arm, you know, out the bullpen. So, you know, but hey, you know, this baseball team is, I mean, fun to watch, been very fun to watch. Also, shout out to the softball team, you know, with the win over number 5 Georgia. That was huge.
Yeah, and then they said, how do y'all feel about Alabama softball beating Florida State? And they trolled them afterwards. Can't blame the committee this time. I loved it. I loved it. And, you know, as an avid softball fan, I was here for it. And I was hoping, and I think one of my favorite things that has happened at University of Alabama is the social media team they have. And whether it's the posters, you know, their tweets and stuff after the games, I'm here for it. And they're so clever. And for them to put that together in that tweet, love it. Chris Williams, if Alabama can beat Wisconsin and Georgia back-to-back, I will get roll tattooed on my forehead. Well, all right, you know what? Justin, please screenshot that. I'm going to say something to
He can either get that or he can get some, you know, 14
Chris got a hammer.
This guy is always here.
Yeah.
I've been gone for months, and this guy is still here.
Oh, he is consistent as they are losers. So listen, I'll say earlier up there, he talked about really nice facilities. Chris, the only nice facility y'all have are those really nice air-conditioned porta potties that are spread all over campus. And I will say, those are the nicest porta potties I've ever had to use. Okay.
They never have any toilet paper in them.
Do what?
They never have any toilet paper in them.
That's right. No, they did have plenty because every time I went, they lost. So they didn't have anything to roll.
By far the worst visiting locker room.
Oh, I'm sure.
Terrible.
I mean, there's not a good thing about going to Auburn. I mean, can you name one? I can't.
They still have the urinal that's like one long thing. It's so
Ew.
No.
Well, the good thing about Chris is he is a free view for us. So I appreciate his loyalty and his commitment and perseverance. I mean, whatever. Anyway,
come back down there. So we're gonna put roses in the corner of the end zone next time we're down there.
That's right. Put a little crane on. Anyway, before we wrap up, obviously, thank y'all so much for being here again on this Wednesday. Shishi will be back next week, so I won't talk nearly as much, I promise. But before we wrap up and let Chris start, Chris, how can people find you on social media? And you know what? Just want to say personally, best of luck to you. Super excited to watch you. And yeah, we just all need to come to one of your games. That's what needs to happen.
Yes.
We do.
Take a trip down to Arlington, Texas. We'll be
Let's
here.
do it.
Yeah.
But I'm on pretty much all social medias at BG Chris Owens. Probably need to start playing video games because I've done nothing but football for the past month and my brain has been fried.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll buy a baseball game. Baseball season's about to start. Maybe I'll buy the new baseball game.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'll just be playing football, eventually cleaning my apartment. The only thing I've done is make this bed to make it look presentable. But what you can't see is the complete tornado that's around me. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing.
And Dan, where can we follow you? On X, because I got to stop saying Twitter.
Yes, me too. I still say it Twitter, but yeah, you follow my X at Final Whistle Dan. You catch me on Facebook, Dan James IV. Same for Instagram. You catch me weekly, twice a week. As of now, you catch me on Tuesday night at the Final Whistle. You catch me right here every Wednesday night, the Crimson Dynasty. I get to talk more here.
Well, thank y'all so much for being here. You can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever, at the UA Sign Girl. You can follow me on Facebook as well, the UA Sign Girl. Super excited to be a part of this program. I love these guys. Incredible guys. And she's a girl, so we're a great group of people. But Chris, thank you so much for being here tonight. Once again, best of luck to you. And guys, if you've not yet, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll be back next Wednesday. And yeah, we'll have the whole group here. So I guess that's it. Also, don't forget, I need to do the title towel. Don't forget to our sponsors, Workspace Solutions, and also Whitwell Sports. Go get a title towel. They have been a fan of mine. I shouldn't say a fan, but they have followed me on Twitter, and they sent me a title towel when I was UA Sign Girl in college and had it in my back pocket every single game. So yeah, love them, love their support, and we'll be back next week. Chris, Dan, any final thoughts before we go?
Roll Tide.
Shout out Tyler Booker.
All right. I like it. All right. Thank y'all. See y'all next week. Bye, guys. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.